All right, folks, I want to welcome our guest to the show. It's Mike from New Jersey. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. So, I want to get right into it. Let's talk about what got you into this subject, and why don't you take us back to where you were, what you were doing, and what happened to you, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So, initially, when I first got into it, I was watching Finding Bigfoot on TV, and I was working in Sarasota, Florida, at a beach resort. It was like the best job I've ever had. But I was bored, so I went on online and went on their website, and it's like, oh man, you could go on expeditions and look for Bigfoot with these guys. I was like, oh, that's so badass. Can I swear?
You can absolutely say whatever the fuck you want to say.
Okay. So I normally don't, but that one kind of slipped. But anyways, um, so uh, so I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was engaged at the time, so I went home and I was like, "Hun, you're never gonna believe this." And I had never been in the woods prior to this, like inside growing up, video games, indoor kind of thing. I used to have a quad that was like the biggest outdoor kind of thing I had, but it was in my backyard, so it wasn't anything like crazy. Um, but anyways, so we broke up right before this expedition thing, and I found out the tickets were non-refundable. So I got two of them, and I paid a lot of money to go on this, and the tickets were non-refundable. So I was like, crap. So we broke up, and I moved up to the city of Tampa, and I got a job on the ambulance there. And I was kind of the thing was like 2 weeks away, and I had nobody to come with me. So I was like, I went out in a blue, and one of my partners, so I worked with like 12 hours in total. I was like, so Jimmy, this is gonna be, this is gonna come out from left field, but I got these tickets and I need to go. I was wondering if you want to come look for Bigfoot up in the Panhandle of Florida with me in a couple weeks. And he's like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. And boom, best friends to this day. So we get up there, and it, it was crazy. I don't know if you've ever been on one of these campouts, but it was everything you thought it would be. From seeing the TV shows or the cartoons, or just from just dreaming about what Bigfooting would be. This covered every base you could possibly imagine. Crazy people, amazing, awesome people. I mean, so we decided to camp. There was like 60 people here. So we decided to camp away from these people because I'm like, these people are crazy. They're looking for Bigfoot. And here we are doing the exact same thing, but we decided it was in our best interest to keep to ourselves. So we camped a little bit further away from everybody, and that plays kind of an important part in the story later. So nothing happened the entire time. It was a 3 night trip, and nothing at all happened, which kind of was a letdown, But whatever. It was the final night, and me and my buddy, we were up. We were watching a meteor shower, and we were both living in the city, so we both missed kind of seeing the night sky. So it was like the perfect way to end the trip. And we hear a tree knock, and I was like, oh, okay. I instantly thought, here we are, last night of the trip. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. These people they got to be, the people that put on this expedition got to be messing with us. So I was like, okay, I got it. And then, another minute goes by, 2 minutes, and we hear a tree knock in the complete opposite direction. So I'm like, these people are pretty good. They must have radios and walkie talkies, and they're, how the Bigfoot people love their walkie talkies. So, it's like, wow, this is pretty in depth. And then about 5 minutes goes by, and a rock comes crashing down through the trees. It was probably just a tennis ball sized rock, kind of comes crashing down. You hear it was we were covered by pine trees, and you could hear them just crashing down they were crashing down through the trees. And there was four of them over a total of like 15 minutes. And I was scared. The second the first one came out of the woods, I was like, nope, in no way. Now these people are crazy, and even if it's not a person, it's a Bigfoot, and there's no way I'm camping here. This is done. We found them. Good stuff. I'm out. And my friend's like, well, if you want to sleep in the car, and before he could get car out of his mouth, finish the sentence, I had my tent and I was running, just beelining it to the car. So he talked some sense into me, and we got those other rocks that were thrown, the four other rocks, making the total of five rocks that came out of the wood line. And my friend was like, I think I'm going to throw a rock back at it. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea, because we got, it's going to be a lose lose here, whatever we have, because either it's a person, okay, you might come out with assault charges because you're in a case or something, or it's a Bigfoot and you're going to piss off Bigfoot, and it's a lose lose. So after he throws a rock back at it, I knew it was at that exact second it wasn't a person, because like a laptop sized boulder came crashing down through the trees and landed like 5 feet from us. So it was that, and then everything after that stopped, and that was it. That was my first experience, and that was in what, the summer of 20, or no, the fall, October 2011. So now here we are 11, 12 years later, and I'm talking to you. It's been amazing, an amazing ride so far.
You're not the first person that I've talked to that's been on a BFRO investigation, and there was a guy from North Carolina that I had on the show a while back, and I'm horrible with names, so I don't remember his name. But he was talking about he was going on this BFRO expedition to basically write this fodder story and make a little money for a magazine, and basically talk shit about the BFRO and make fun of Bigfoot people, right? And he goes on this BFRO expedition with Matt Moneymaker, nonetheless, and he has all these experiences. And he's like, he's in the middle of the woods with Matt Moneymaker, who fell asleep at one point during the investigation, I think. And then all this stuff started happening. They had people were seeing things, and they had their walkie-talkies going, and there was rock throwing, and he experienced all these things. And then he's been on this journey ever since, and he's a firm believer in Bigfoot because of these experiences he had on this expedition. So I think it's interesting that you sort of went in as a non-believer, or were you a believer at the onset of the investigation? Did you?
I hadn't thought twice about it, to be honest. I just thought it was going to be a cool little pre-wedding little trip into the woods, do something a little kind of crazy and wild. And I had never thought twice about it. Like I said, I'd never even been in the woods. I didn't even know that there were like bears up in where we were camping in Florida, let alone, did I think there were Bigfoot.
Well, you said that was your first experience. You've been doing this about 11, 12 years now. So, what other experiences? I know that wasn't the last time you've been in the woods. I've seen your YouTube channel. So, why don't you tell us about your other experiences that you've had over the last 11 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few. We the second experience happened in Florida as well, and that one was kind of the one that made me from not a skeptic but a unknown to a believer. And we were in an area in Florida called Colt Creek State Park, and I was actually just down there a couple of weeks ago, so I revisited the site. It was really cool. Um, and we were down there, and it was like kind of my no holds barred type of night. Like I was doing vocalizations, and we were walking along this trail, and we had spotlights going. I was doing howls every 5 feet. It was kind of whatever. And I wouldn't recommend anybody just getting into Bigfoot to do that, but that was kind of how the night was going and how the night progressed. So that's how we rolled with it. And my buddy, he's shining the spotlight. Jimmy, again, the same guy. He's got this like high powered like marine spotlight thing, and he's shining it through the woods, and it comes across two sets of eyes. And one of the eyes was like a red kind of orange set, and the other set of eyes was like a light blue kind of set. And they were kind of chilling next to each other. And we were brand new into this, so initially we thought people. I didn't realize, and my buddy didn't realize, that people didn't have eye shine. So boom, right off the bat we're like, hey, sorry, this area that we were hiking in is a very, very big hunting area. So we think there's like poachers because it's at night, and we're like, oh crap, we're gonna leave. Sorry, sorry. Have a good night. And then the one set turns and looks at the other set, the orange set, because you could see one eye disappear, and then it guess it turned back, and then it blinked, and we were out of there. That was it. My buddy, he left us a mark in the tree, and he also put a rock on the trail, so we were able to go back the next day. But yeah, that night we were out of the woods. We were coming in hot because we had our radios. We had somebody at camp because the Bigfoot people on radios again. So we were on the radios like, hey, Jimmy, we're or Aggie, we're coming in hot. We have activity, and he's like, yeah, I know, I hear the activity. It's at the north end of camp, and we're like, no, it's the south end. We're coming in hot from the south end, and he's like, oh, well, you better hurry up then. So he was having activity there too, which is kind of cool. And that was a night that he kind of turned into from a skeptic to a believer as well. So, three people in one night from two different incidents is kind of interesting. But there's been plenty more. We've recorded amazing vocalizations both in the Catskill Mountains in New York, and High Point State Park here in New Jersey. We got some cool footprint from up here as well, all over.
What kind of vocalizations are you guys hearing up in those mountains?
Howls, howls, nice, long, sustained howls. I've had good luck having them answer to like a barred owl call, because I guess I do really crappy barred owl calls, so they must think, oh, that guy's must be calling us or something. I don't know. But yeah, the couple vocalizations I've gotten, I've sent off to linguists and stuff, and they come back and say, well, it's outside of really any known animal, and the human range doesn't it's not really part of human range, so what could it be, you know?
Yeah, man, the vocalizations are one of those things that I've talked about so many times on the show with so many different people, but it's so interesting to me because you're hearing that in Florida. You hear it in the Catskills in New York. You're hearing it in North Carolina, Tennessee, out Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Canada. People are recording the same things over and over and over. And that's one of the things that has fascinated me about the subjects since I've gotten into it, basically. Because I'm hearing the same things here on our property in North Carolina that people are recording, halfway around the world and certainly across the country. Let's talk a little bit about you mentioned Florida a couple of times and a couple of the experiences you had in Florida. I've always been interested in the difference because I've had a couple of people on from Florida, and we've talked a little bit about the difference in skunk ape versus Bigfoot, right?
Mm,
Do you
right.
think there's a difference? What do you think? And I know we're speculating here. I'm probably putting you on the spot, but what do you think the difference in the two is? Because I've heard the differences in skunk ape being smaller, and even the last guy that I had on from Florida, we kind of got into it, and he was making sure that everybody knew that there was 8, 10 foot Bigfoot that have been seen, Sasquatch that have been seen down in Florida. So they're not that much smaller in Florida versus, say, Pacific Northwest. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on it?
Well, and here's the thing. I take a very scientific approach to my philosophies and my beliefs and my research. So when people ask me the difference between, or they say when I'm in North Florida, for example, and people say I'm looking for skunk ape, I don't say anything, but I kind of say, no, I don't think I'm really looking for skunk ape per se. I think skunk ape more so resides in the Everglades, and I can think they're cousin per se of the normal Bigfoot, the United States Bigfoot, if you will. But I think even you dip down into the Central Florida area, and I think that still you still have a good chance of having like Bigfoot uh, there. And it's simple because you mentioned that they could be smaller, and like I said, I take like some scientific stuff into it, and it's called Bergman's rule, which is like when animals from warmer climates, they can sustain themselves throughout the year, so they don't have to eat as much in the warmer months. to get bigger. So in that scene, the perfect example is black bear in Florida. You have big black bear in Florida, you're looking at 300 pounds. Or up in New Jersey, ours is 700-800 pounds. And even you go up further north in Canada, they're bigger. Um, so I think that's why, yes, I think they're smaller, but I don't think they're different species per se. But I think when you get down into the Everglades, when you kind of have that breaking line, if you will, then I think you might have like a cousin.
I tend to agree with that because when I've talked to people from Florida, they've said basically the same thing. It's kind of like southern Florida, central Florida, and then northern Florida is where you see the differences. So I think those lines of demarcation are certainly in everybody's mind. And I'm always fascinated to hear what people's opinion are because it's hard enough for me when I first got into the subject, and even the more I talk to people, to wrap my brain around the fact that there's this bipedal, giant ape, right, that's walking around in North America. And then you start getting into there's multiple species or offshoots of one or
Mm-hmm.
the other. So I like to talk about the discovery, right, and why it is that you think you've done this for 11 years and you've had these experiences. Have you had a physical sighting outside of the eye shine?
No, everything but, like I said, the vocalizations, the footprint finds. I think I've been close. I think I've been within 20 feet of them, but I don't think I've never. I might have gotten a picture of one once, but it's like it was down the Pine Barrens, and it's a blurry as anything because I zoomed in. So nobody is ever going to see that to be the light of day because it was probably just a deer, you know.
Right. So that begs the question for me is, and I ask this of a lot of people on the show, why do you think it is that we're in 2022 and we've had the evidence in the past, right? We've had the Patterson Gimlin film. We've got controversial folks like Todd Standing, right, who have some HD quality video of these things and still pictures and whatnot. But we don't have definitive proof, right? So why is it, do you think, as an investigator, as a researcher who goes out into the subject and into the field in pursuit of these things, why do you think it is that we haven't had that definitive moment of proof of beyond a shadow of a doubt these things exist and this is what they are?
I think the right condition, just like a sighting, the right conditions have to be met, and the circumstances have to align. The planets have to align the perfect way for you to get some sort of evidence of a creature like this, let alone a sighting. We just said I've been at this 11 years and I've never had a sighting, let alone finding some sort of physical evidence. I mean, that's a needle in a pile of needles, I think. Um, and the evidence that people have found have been lucky enough to come back, and it is an unknown primate DNA type thing, or the footprints of their cast that have they send them off to Dr. Meldrum, and boom, it's not, it's an actual bipedal animal. Like that's the kind of evidence that I think as a researcher we all hope to come across. But again, just the chances of us having that is like, people always ask me, where are the bones? And I say, well, how many times have people not come across a bear skeleton or a bear skull in the woods? I thankfully enough have my I just acquired one, which is cool. But everybody says, no, I've been hunting for 40-50 years, I've never come across a bear carcass or skeleton in the woods. So then you put on the population of Bigfoot, or the lack thereof, and I think you'd be lucky to come across any sort of evidence at all.
And I think that's one of the things that, I've done entire shows on the Patterson Gimlin film. I've argued with people back and forth, skeptics and cynics and true believers alike. And I still, to this day, I run across it. I was posting some stuff on Facebook for the show earlier, and somebody had a meme up of that famous Patty walking and turning back. And every time I watch it, I just scratch my head and say, I still don't know definitively if that's a real creature. I've said it numerous times that I do believe that it's a real creature, but I still have that moment of I'm just not sure. And then you throw in some of the other controversial folks that claim to have footage, like Todd Standing, I've had Todd on the show and we've talked about it, and we've talked about it in private. And I tell Todd to this day, I, I like you, dude, but I'm just not sure. I'm not 100% convinced that everything you presented as evidence of these things being real on video is 100% authentic. And I don't know that I'll ever get there, right? So, as far as the evidence is concerned, I think that's what has kept me going because it's tough sometimes. You wake up, and I'm sure everybody has those days. I know I certainly do, that I just wake up and wonder, is any of this real, right?
Mm.
But when I have conversations with people like Jeff Meldrum, when I had Jeff on the show, his breakdown of all of the evidence that he's been able to take a look at, if nothing else, I think it may be a bold statement, but just a conversation with Jeff Meldrum puts me on the path of believing that these creatures are real because there's really no way that that evidence can be faked. Now, people fake footprints all the time, they fake evidence all the time, but the specimens that Jeff Meldrum has taken a look at and sort of put his stamp of approval on as being authentic bipedal footprints made by what he believes to be a Sasquatch, hands down, I'm done. So, what other evidence do you think that you go out? Are you going out in the field to have a sighting, or are you just going out to collect that evidence that you say? What do you think is going to be the end all be all outside of a body? Do you think that we may be able to prove these things are real?
Well, you see, I go out because I want to find out what through Roxany in Florida. That's kind of like the my personal goal. So anything that I could come across to help me figure that out in the long run, sure. I mean, I think end all, just kind of with every researcher, would be to have a Class A sighting. And I know, unfortunately, that's probably not in the books for a number of reasons, but um, I think you know it's more so, rather than trying to find a Bigfoot. It's not about finding, it's about the journey of getting there, I think. And it's about meeting people like you. And I was just at a presentation Southwest Pennsylvania, and meeting the people there and stuff, and networking. It's just that's why I like to do it. It's not about, like I said, it's not about the finding, it's about the journey of getting there.
Well said, man. And I say it often in private. People ask me, I've got friends and family that obviously I do the show. The show's grown into this massive thing that now I'm doing 3 podcasts, but they ask me all the time, like, why do you keep doing this? I just did a television show that came out on Vice earlier this month, and that was a lot of work. It was a lot of like 10 days. These folks are following me around with cameras in my face to record this on my property in North Carolina, and we don't let a ton of folks on our property. It's kind of our safe space. And for
Sure.
me to do that, it took a lot for me to do that, but it's always about the journey for me. I met some of the coolest people doing that project in and of itself, right? So, and getting to talk to people like you and Jeff Meldrum and even Todd Standing, Les Stroud, some of the people that I've had the opportunity to get to know because of the subject of Bigfoot is what keeps me coming back. You know, I'll hear everything. I think I've heard everything every time I hear a story that's just as far out there as it can possibly be, and somebody always trumps it. I had a conversation with a guy on a show for a show that'll come out here soon. I spent about an hour and a half talking to this guy. He's apparently discovered a new nest site near his house. And we talk about that, and he's pulling stuff. I'm on video with him, and he's pulling out evidence and showing me this hair and all these things that he's
Wow.
found. And I just think, holy shit, this is just a newer discovery, and there's no telling what, rabbit holes we can go down and find
Yeah.
just on his property of this place that he goes and finds this evidence. And he has tons of encounters with these things. So it keeps me going. It keeps me coming back, and these kind of conversations are what I love. I know you do your own YouTube channel. I want to talk about that and what your projects are and what you got going on. And I know you've got to hear some stories out there. Is there any stories that may not be yours that other people have shared with you as far as encounters or something that has stuck out to you that you can share with us?
Oh man, are you familiar with the Battle Mountain, 1999, and I believe it was not sure where, Nevada
I
was
should be
where
familiar with it, but I'm not.
it was I guess there was a kind of large scale forest fire there on the an area called Battle Mountain, and the forest fires and the EMTs, and this kind of rings home to me because I'm a past EMT firefighter, so I kind of, it relates. And the EMTs and the firefighters, they were just I guess off cooling down, rehydrating, having some lunch or whatever, and out comes the what from the woods, a Bigfoot that was burned, charred, smoking, and kind of collapses right down in front of the firefighters at their feet. So they throw him in the back of an ambulance. They start IVs on him. They hear the bowel sounds. It was documented. They heard the bowel sounds. They see blood dripping down from the IV site into the bottom of the ambulance. Like, it's very descriptive. And then the military comes and convoys the ambulance away. Boom, all sworn to secrecy, except for this guy who decides, screw that, I'm writing about it. That was one of my that's probably my favorite kind of favorite story, because just the descriptions into it, it's like someone would really have to go through a lot to make that up.
I've heard some interesting stories. I've never heard that story, so I'm making
Hmm.
notes as you're talking, and I'm going to go down that rabbit hole eventually when I have time this week. But I've heard other stories similar to that where people have said the military has shot one of these things or recovered bodies from people and things like that. And that's a whole nother show for a whole nother day to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories on what the government
Agreed.
does or does not know, right? I certainly have my opinions on that, but it's interesting, just stories like that. Like, if I hadn't talked to you, you wouldn't have mentioned that, and then I wouldn't have something else to look forward to, and I may even do a show about it eventually. So,
Mm.
well, we've talked a little bit about your research and we've talked a little bit about your experiences. So, tell us about this YouTube channel and what you guys are doing with that, and where we can find it and go take a look at your stuff.
Yeah, well, we're actually in the process of releasing our fifth season. We just yesterday released an episode that we filmed in the southern Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. That was a cool trip. And we have, I think, I'm looking at the thing now, we have, looks like 6 or 7 more episodes this season to be released. They're released every other Sunday on my YouTube channel, which is Sussex County Bigfoot NJ. Or you could just type in the name of my show, which is In the Shadow of Big Red Eye. And from there, you can see all of our episodes throughout the seasons, and a little preview to my little docu series called Squatchables, which is like Bigfoot 101, how to get into Bigfooting. Made a DVD on that, so if anybody's interested in that, they could check out a few episodes from that as well.
Awesome, man. I'll definitely link to that in the show notes so everybody can go over and check it out. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your stuff with us, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. That was great.
Absolutely. Well, that was great, man.
That was a little short, no?
Yeah, you got more. We can keep going.
Oh, I could talk for hours. I mean, you two me. Keep asking questions. I can keep going. I thought you were leading into kind of an ending there.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is maybe have you back at some point and sort of highlight and maybe even play a little bit of your show on the show, and maybe we can
Oh, that'd be cool.
go a little bit more in depth um, with the show if that's something you're into. Do you guys
Yeah.
ever run into any weird stuff out there, like lights or any crazy
Uh,
paranormal stuff?
yeah, I twice, like I saw it, like, and I would call it a UFO, and 4 other people saw it, and it was just like, it was a light, and it was like a kind of red, and it was zigzagging throughout the sky, making like a W just throughout the kept zigzagging. And it was right. And I hate to even say this, but it was right before we got some really good Bigfoot vocalizations. So some of the best ones we've actually got, actually. So it's not enough, I know, and it's going to sound crazy to some people, but that's not enough for me to link the two. I still think that Bigfoot's kind of more of a bipedal primate humanid animal than relink to anything UFO. But the fact that those two happened on the same night within 15 minutes of each other is very odd.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that is one of the most crazy parts of this for me is I've talked to so many people who say the exact same thing. And I used to chalk it up to, okay, they've got weird stuff happening over here and then weird stuff happening over here, or they're just batshit crazy and they're just making it up,
right.
right?
Yep.
So when I talk to people like you who have those experiences, it it always brings me back to how big of a coincidence can this really be, and they be completely unconnected, right? You're seeing a craft that's clearly a UFO. It's unidentified. It's a flying object, and like I say all the time on the show, I don't know if there's little green or gray men flying it, but I don't know what the hell it is. You guys didn't know what it was. And then you get these vocalizations that are then connected to what you believe to be a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch making those vocalizations. I don't understand how there's not a correlation in some way or in most cases. But I too, like you, I believe these things are flesh and blood. But the more I've talked to different people who've had different experiences, Ron Moorhead, for example, Ron thinks there's a whole lot more to these
Mhm.
things than just the big dumb ape. And I don't know. At the end of the day, it's all subjective, right? Nobody really knows. But when I ask those questions to researchers like you, 9 times out of 10, somebody always comes back with, yeah, there was this one time, or yeah, this has happened 15 times in our investigations.
Although I think I could go along with saying that even if you're not researching Bigfoot and just in the woods, you could have, it depends on what you're looking for. I think if we weren't looking up in the sky, we would have never seen the UFO. If we weren't looking for Bigfoot, we probably never would have heard that vocalization. So if you're, I mean, the layperson could have the exact same, you know, opportunities that we do. However, they have no idea, or they're not looking in the right place, or not knowing what they're looking for. So that also, how many times does that happen as well?
Yeah, man, I see it all the time. I've seen weird stuff recently on drives around our property and between here and the next city. And if I hadn't been looking up, like 98% of the people on Earth aren't looking up at any given time to see whatever's going on in the sky. It's the same thing in the woods, There's if you're not in the woods or you're in the woods doing other things and not paying attention to what's going on around you, there's no telling what you walk past and would never see if you're
Right.
not looking for it, right?
Here's a question for you. So if you're out researching and you saw a UFO, would you say that, oh, I have a better chance of seeing a Bigfoot right now, or encountering a Bigfoot?
I would probably not make that. I wouldn't make that
You wouldn't
assumption
correlate the
because
two?
I don't think I would. Even knowing what I've known
Mm,
from talking to people who have had that, it would be very difficult for me to have that correlation or make that correlation even as of right now because I've seen
yeah,
both.
I
I've had a UFO experience.
mhm.
I haven't seen a Bigfoot. I've had what I believe to be experiences with them, but I wasn't looking up to see if there was a UFO during any of the things that were going on, in my
Mm,
childhood or even more recently here. But no, I
yeah.
don't even think to this day I would draw that correlation of there's a UFO and I've got a better chance or possibility of interacting with a
Yeah.
Sasquatch.
Yeah, I don't know. I totally agree with that, but and that's even with having that kind of close, relatively time sensitive, the double sighting there, if you will, or double encounter, and I would still not say that if I heard a Bigfoot tree knock to look up. I don't think that would, I would, like you said, it wouldn't correlate enough to me. But that's an interesting thing, and I bet you that a lot of people would.
Yeah, I should start asking. I should add that to my questions. I don't ever come up with questions to ask people before I interview them. Some people have asked me to send them scripts and what I'm going to talk about, and I never know until I open my mouth what's going to come out on the show. So, but that's a good point. Some of the people who believe that there is a correlation would probably answer that relatively quickly. Oh yeah, if I saw a UFO, I would start looking around. If I were in the woods doing Bigfoot research, I would feel like there's probably going to be some sort of interaction or vice versa. But me, I'm just not there. And
Yeah.
you know,
Um, I was just in. I mentioned earlier. I was just in southwestern Pennsylvania, and that's home of the Chestnut Ridge area, which is very famous for UFOs and Bigfoots and everything like that. So, being from that part of the state too, it was interesting to see the percentage of people that thought the two were connected or believed the two may have had something to do with each other. It was much higher than in places that other places of the state and the country that I've been. It's pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, man, it's such a rabbit hole you could go down, and it branches off, and you go different directions for hours, and you just get. I get caught up all the time in conversations with people, and I scratch my head like this conversation. I'll leave, and I'll be scratching my head thinking, "Damn, is there some sort of correlation that I'm missing here?" I don't know, man, but I love it. Good conversation for real. Um, I have no idea when this will be out. I will. I'll take a look at my schedule. I know I've got 2 or 3 shows that I've got to do over the next couple of weeks and get them out. I'm still posting shows from interviews I did like in October of last year. So,
Oh yeah, I hear you, man. It's no rush. It's all good. I know how it is.
but I'll definitely let you know. We'll stay in touch, and I'll shoot you an email or whatever and let you know when it's coming out, so you guys can share it on your social media and everything and help promote the show. It'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna hop off of here. I've got another interview coming up at like 8:15. So,
All righty. Good luck with that. Have a good rest of the night, man.
all right, you too, bud.
All right. Take care, Brian.
All right.